The Democrat get out of jail free card on their mass invasion operation is the bipartisan border bill. Well, that bill was trash. Here's a truth drop from the great Congressman Byron Donalds.
That she would sign this bipartisan Senate bill.
Yeah.
America, the bipartisan Senate bill, quote unquote, would allow 1.8 million illegals into the country every year, and that would be under federal law. So you're already talking about a little over 8.5 million people over the course of her quote unquote presidency.
Yeah.
If she signed that into law, that's crazy.
Yeah.
We already got 15 million people in the country, and she would sign a law that would allow, by law, another 8.5 million people into the country. That is insane. That's her position.
Did Trump need to say a word for that bill to fail?
No.
Probably not, right?
No, the bill was trash.
Exactly. That stupid trash bill would have codified catch and release, allowed 1.8 million illegals in per year, fund sanctuary cities. It would have funded NGOs responsible for aiding and abetting this drag and drop invasion, handed out work permits to illegals. It would have done nothing to deport illegals. It would have continued weak asylum screening, given 60 billion to Ukraine, and afforded lawyers to illegals. The bill was trash. You don't have to just take my word for it, because I have an immigration attorney on deck, and he joins me now, Matthew Kolken. Welcome to the show. I have so many questions for you. You know, it was actually your tweet that was retweeted by Fox News' own Bill Malhusian that caught my eye, and I'm so excited to have this conversation. But, you know, it is interesting for my viewers and my listeners out there. They would think that an immigration attorney would be all for mass invasion immigration, that this would be something that would actually benefit you. Why are you sounding the alarm?
Well, as an immigration lawyer, I am someone who has dedicated his near 30-year career in upholding the current legal system to come to the United States. Obviously, there are people who violate the law, and there are provisions in the law that can allow for the correction of those intentional errors or unintentional errors. But we're a sovereign country, and we're supposed to be controlling our borders. There shouldn't be basically a free will for an individual to be able to enter here just without proper vetting. I'm an American. I want to make sure that the citizens of this country are safe, that we're not allowing terrorists into this country, that we're not allowing individuals with disqualifying criminal records into this country and who potentially can do Americans harm. So despite the fact that I'm one of the most prominent deportation defense lawyers in the United States, the law is supposed to be followed, and it's supposed to be adhered by. And when your first act is to come to the United States with a fraudulent asylum claim and present yourself, well, you're committing a federal crime. And ironically, although I was a huge critic of Barack Obama, 51% of all federal criminal prosecutions for crimes under his watch were for violations of federal criminal immigration law statutes. The first step should have been of the Biden administration, rather than hanging a carrot for people to be enticed to come to this country illegally. He should have continued the policies of the Trump and the Obama administration. And Trump didn't do it as much as Obama, because people weren't coming to the United States in the same numbers that Trump under Obama. He should have been prosecuting these people for coming to the United States in an undesignated place. You're supposed to, if you are an asylum seeker, you're supposed to present yourself at a port of entry, and you're supposed to say, I have a fear of return. And then the government, through the law that was enacted by Congress and signed by President Bill Clinton, is mandated to enter an expedited removal order against that individual. It's a summary deportation order. And then they are mandated to take that individual into custody for the scheduling of a credible fear interview to determine whether or not they have the ability to express a legitimate fear of return to their native country under an enumerated ground. And instead, what Biden did was he stopped enforcing the law on the inside of the United States, so that everyone knew, if you get into the country, you're not going to get deported, because we're not going to look for you. You're free in this country. And moreover, with the millions and millions of people that have come into this country, our immigration courts the backlog in them has more than tripled. Now, I have many clients who have legitimate defenses to removal. All of my clients have legitimate defenses to removal. That's why I took their case. And those individuals are being deprived their opportunity for due process because I can't get into court anymore. Wow. The hearings are scheduled out years and years and years in advance.
Wow. I have a lot of questions on exactly what that process looks like. Kind of going back to your tweet, I was astounded. But, I also want to discuss what you brought up in the bipartisan border bill, and you alluded to it in your tweet. But, there's a lot of folks that say, hey, listen, the bipartisan border bill, Tim Walz said it just the other night, well, it would have put more immigration lawyers, and so that's why we don't want the backlog that you just talked about. And Tim Walz and Kamala Harris and others on the Democrat side, they have said that, oh, well, we just get more attorneys down there. It'll just speed up the process. It shouldn't take 5 years to get a hearing. But, we listen to that with a good amount of skepticism, because people like me tend to know what their end goal is. But can you address that having more people like you that are able to expedite the process, would that be helpful as the Democrats are claiming it would be?
Well, let me tell you what the process is like now. Okay. What they're doing is, rather than following the law, which was mandated by Congress, they are paroling individuals into the United States, scheduling them for a temporary hearing. And that temporary hearing allows them to show up in court to get a real hearing date. And when they get that real hearing date, it's scheduled 5-6 years down the line. And when you show up 5-6 years down the line for that first hearing, a preliminary hearing, then they can schedule you for what's called an individual hearing. It's a trial on the merits. And that could be 10 years down the line. So what we're dealing with here now is, as an attorney who represents these people in immigration court, I may be retired before they ever have a trial on their case.
Wow. Well, and they say, well, if there's more immigration attorneys, then there won't be this backlog. But from what you're telling me, the backlog is already so bad, but they're not really following the law anyway, these temporary hearings. And then, alluding to the tweet, that even if they say, hey, listen, this doesn't cut the mustard here, then they can appeal that decision, and then that takes even longer?
Well, in the scenario that I just outlined, which is what's happening, they are not being given an asylum-only hearing. If they follow the law and they're expeditiously removed and they pass a credible fear hearing, they're scheduled for an asylum-only hearing where they can only request asylum in the United States. They can't assert any other defenses. When you parole an individual in the United States and institute removal proceedings under the normal process, if they were encountered from inside of the country, then you can assert other defenses. So hypothetically speaking, if you've been paroled into the country, and in 15 years, you're married to a United States citizen, you'll have the opportunity to apply for a green card in the context of a removal proceeding.
Wow. Well, they're gaming the system. They know how this works. And the cartels also know how to overwhelm the system, because when you overwhelm the system, then that whole detention situation, it becomes more difficult. And there's rules and regulations that our border agents and our ICE agents must follow. They can't detain people indefinitely. There's not enough beds. They just let them out, give them these notices to appear. 5 years later, we hope you show up. And also, from your perspective and in your expertise and what you've seen and what you've dealt with, to me, when you say come back in 5 years, I would assume that a good number of these individuals probably have children in that amount of time that are born in the United States, anchor babies, as it would be, affectionately called. So if these people then do have the anchor babies, is there really any realistic shot that these people are going to be deported?
Well, yes and no. Until that child turns 21, they're not able to sponsor their parent for a United States citizen. But if we're talking about an appeals process that, when cumulatively you look at how long it's going to take to get into immigration court, and a good immigration lawyer can drag things out for years and years and years. create appealable issues. There's potential remands, et cetera. It is possible that some of these cases may not come to conclusion for 21 years. And at that point, if you have a United States citizen child and you've been paroled into the country, as these individuals have, then they become an immediate relative of a United States citizen adult child. And then they would be able to get a green card that way. And then there's other provisions which basically state that if they don't institute removal proceedings the correct way, if they don't put the time, date, and place on the hearing, and this is a litigatable issue because they're making up dates on these, it's called a notice to appear. They're making up dates that don't exist and starting them, and then they're filing them with the court for a first appearance hearing, which is a fictitious date. There is an appealable issue that doesn't stop time for the accumulation of a 10-year period that would enable an individual to apply for cancellation of removal as a non-lawful permanent resident of the United States by showing exceptional or extremely unusual hardship to a United States citizen, spouse, parent, or child. So, I mean, if you're an immigration lawyer that really understands the system, I can make it a nightmare to deport any of my clients. Very few of my clients get deported.
Yeah, well, and not only that, let's be honest, because even you take all the legal aspect out of it and the loopholes and the running of the clock, as you mentioned, and you just simply talk about the emotional BS that gets pulled. So we've seen it before when Donald Trump, even with his border policy, had a zero tolerance policy, and it was, they deemed it child separation and everybody cried their tears. Oh, you can't separate them. Blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Well, to me, even if you're not running the clock until this illegal alien or anchor baby is 21, it's still going to be, well, the baby is born here, and so you can't take the mom away from the baby, and that would be child separation, and you can't do that, and everyone would cry their tears. So these people are never going to leave. I mean, they're never actually going to be removed. I mean, for goodness sakes, we can't even remove the murderers. That report that came out last week, the ICE report that came out that says we have hundreds of thousands of criminal aliens and tens of thousands of ones that have been, convicted of homicide, of rape, of violent crime. We can't even get rid of them. So to me, this whole landscape here is just built for a mass invasion. And when you see these ICE reports about the number of criminal aliens, violent criminal aliens, I'm sure that when you see it, you know that that's probably just the tip of the iceberg. What else can you tell us about your expertise in that area, or just things that you've seen over the years in your career?
Well, I've represented people who have committed some things called crimes that are called an aggravated felony. The scarlet letter crimes, murder, rape, all of robbery, things of that nature. And although a large percentage of legal immigrants in this country, there's actually a smaller amount of crime amongst legal immigrants in this country. They're good people. They work very hard. They support their families. Most of them, at least my clients, believe in the sanctity of marriage and the family unit. They're good people. But the people that are coming into the United States with no real claim to asylum, that are coming here either to do us harm, like the gangs that are taking over apartment buildings, and who are unfortunately engaging in other types of unspeakable crimes like rape and murder. Those individuals need to be prioritized. And to go to your previous point with respect to whether or not any of these individuals with children will ever be deported, under a Democratic administration, there's the deportation priorities memorandums which are issued, which state that we're going to focus our limited resources on particularly serious criminals. And we have limited ICE resources. And now we started this whole conversation about why the bipartisan border bill failed. Well, this wasn't a bipartisan border bill. This was a foreign aid bill. There was 18.3 billion dollars allocated. And I'm just looking at the numbers right now. We're talking about $60 billion in military aid to Ukraine, $14.1 billion in aid to Israel, $4.83 billion in aid to the Indo-Pacific region, $10 billion in humanitarian assistance to Ukraine, Israel, Gaza, and among other places. Then there was $2.3 billion in refugee assistance inside of the United States. $2.3 billion, just a drop in the bucket. And then there was $20.2 billion for improvements to U.S. border security. And then somehow there's $2.72 billion for domestic uranium enrichment. So way more than half of that bill was giving money away to countries that don't have our immigration problem.
Right. Well, we've always done more to protect other people's borders than we've protected our own. And it would, in my opinion, only get worse under a Kamala administration. The get out of jail free card alongside bipartisan border bill is, oh, well, the crossings are down now. Well, they're flying people in, and I'm sure you're well aware of the CBP app that allows people to essentially make a reservation.
Crosses aren't down. It's the illegal crossings. It's the illegal crossings. The individuals who have not been paroled into the country. If someone uses the app and is paroled into the country, that's not considered to be an illegal crossing.
Right.
They're basically in a situation where they are being given a period of stay authorized by the Attorney General to remain in the United States. And then the Haitians and other groups are being given temporary protected status, which I support when we have humanitarian crisis in other countries. But let me give an anecdotal personal experience. My late wife was a refugee from the former Soviet Union. Her and her family had to wait for years to be able to come to the United States to secure a visa to be able to enter the United States legally. That's the way it's supposed to be. The U.S. government needs to be able to say, Congress needs to be able to say that there are countries where there are real humanitarian crises. And what we need to do is we need to afford protection to those individuals by having them be vetted properly to ensure that the people that we know who the people that they are before they come to the United States, and then provide them with safe haven after we're sure that these people are desperate and that the countries that they're coming from have life-threatening conditions and that they are really fleeing life-threatening conditions.
And some of us would argue that while the United States is underwater, both figuratively and in some places right now, literally, that there has to be a cap on how much we're willing to help out the rest of the world. At some point, the quota has got to be filled, and then it's got to be, you're going to have to wait a little while. That your country might be a horrible country, but guess what? The USA is full, so we need to deal with what we have, and then we can allow more to come and receive whatever status. But, at some point, in my opinion, we can't be expected to take on the entire world's problems and become a dumping ground for everyone. It's very frustrating to the American people that are currently struggling. I thank you for speaking out about all of this. I will continue to follow you on Twitter and retweet your anecdotes and other information that you're putting out there, because I think it's so important for someone like you to be sounding the alarm on this, certainly somebody that has a lot of authority on this topic. So thank you so much for bringing this to light, and I hope to keep following you and get more information. It only helps the conversation. Thanks so much, Matthew.
Appreciate being here.
Thanks so much. All right, folks, I do want to play a special clip as well in this topic, because our Outkick friend Tyrus on his fantastic show, Maintaining with Tyrus, he sat down with Border Patrol Chief Chris Clem, who gave advice to the current administration on what they ought to do if they actually care about the invasion, which we know that they don't. But here is a tidbit, a little sneak peek of that interview available, of course, on Outkick. Take a look.
Would be the first piece of advice that you could even give them? Like, what is the first thing that they need to do? Like,
well, yeah, I would be grateful if they were willing to listen.
Yeah, again,
okay,
this is,
hypothetically they're listening to me, right?
Yeah.
Well, I would tell them what I was mentioning earlier is you got to stop conflating immigration and border security. You have to focus on securing the border for the American people. So again, it doesn't mean a 2,000-mile wall. It means a wall where the agents say we need it still. It's the technology. Like, finish what we started. And even if President Trump was to call me right now, I'd say, look, I don't think we need it where we needed it 5 years ago. Let's talk to the agents.
Talk to the agents. That would be a great start. Well, listen, you can watch that entire episode of Maintaining with Tyrus on Outkick's YouTube channel. So I hope you'll check that out. Great conversation there. But now, on to this. The big union boss who bragged about his fellow Americans going without due to the port strike lives pretty damn high on the hog. Gavin Newsom is tossing his French Laundry buddy a big exclusive perk. And Politico did the most to help Tim Walz spin his atrocious debate performance. Oh, you know it's time for my losers of the week. So the port workers' strike promises to wreak havoc on the American economy and on the average folks who are already struggling to afford things in Joe and Kamala's America. While I'm not going to get into the merits of the strike or who's in the right or who's in the wrong here, I do think it's important to have a little discussion on the loudmouth union boss who is tone deaf enough to say crap like this, especially when so many folks are struggling in the aftermath of a major hurricane.
People never gave a shit about us until now, when they finally realized that the chain is being broke now. Cars won't come in. Food won't come in. Clothing won't come in. You know how many people depend on our jobs? Half the world. And it's time for them and time for Washington to put so much pressure on them to take care of us, because we took care of them.
Now listen, the blue-collar workers that dude represents that were actually standing behind him in that clip, they have my respect. They are the ones who do the tough jobs a lot of soft and lazy folks can't do or wouldn't do, and they are backbone Americans. Do they deserve a 77% pay increase? I don't know, but what I do know is that their union boss not only comes across as an insensitive, loudmouth jerk, but he's also sitting comfortably in the lap of luxury. His name is Harold Daggett, and not only does he allegedly have some sketchy mob ties dating back to 2005, according to the New York Times, but he also has a sprawling New Jersey mansion that you're seeing there with a 5-car garage, a Bentley convertible, a huge luxury pool, a salary of at least $728,000 to lead the International Longshoremen's Association. At one point, he also allegedly had a 76-foot yacht. Now listen, I don't demonize wealth, but it's pretty tone deaf and also pretty friggin' phony to stand out there on a picket line and basically mock and brag about the pending doom you're about to exact on the American consumer when you have all that at home. It rubs me the wrong way, and I think he more than deserves his spot on my losers of the week. And so does this next greasy snake, Gavin Newsom. So his pen has been busy lately signing legislation to prevent voter ID. And now there's this little doozy. So Gavin, in his charitable spirit, signed a bill to extend liquor sales till 4 a.m., but only in one spot, his buddy's exclusive club lounge inside the new Intuit Dome and future home of the LA Clippers. Yeah, no kidding. The only place in California that will be allowed to extend liquor sales until 4 a.m. will be a VIP suite club that holds about 100 people. The spot will get an exemption from the current moratorium on liquor sales between 2 and 6 a.m. because it's the only fully enclosed arena in the state. Oh, and maybe also because the Clippers are owned by his pal, Steve Ballmer. Oh, and Connie Ballmer, Steve's wife, contributed $1 million to Newsom's campaign to fight his recall in 2021. Oh, and one of the reported top lobbyists on this effort is Jason Kinney, who, drumroll please, dined with Gavi Boy at that infamous French Laundry dinner at the height of the COVID pandemic restrictions in the fall of 2020. Just wild how that works, huh? I'm sure it's just a coincidence, nothing to see here. What a loser. But speaking of losers, my last one this week could easily be Tim Walz due to his disastrous debate performance, but that's just too obvious. So my last loser this week will be Politico magazine, which has gone out of its way to help Tim Walz look less bad with this little spin operation. So according to their bonehead analysis, JD's beard may come off to some women as overly masculine or even misogynistic, but on the other hand, Tim Walz's creepy, bulging and angry eyes are just a symbol of intense passion. Sorry, Politico, I think the bulging eyes were actually due to his own personal shock and awe at just how in over his eyeballs he was during that entire debate. But hey, those are just my losers of the week. Please be sure to tune in tomorrow live at 1 p.m. Eastern for a special deep dive on fossil fuels and American energy independence. Also, make sure you catch full episodes of this show on Fox Nation whenever you like. Please also support the show, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. From Nashville, God bless and take care. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click here and make sure you subscribe here so you never miss a beat. I'll be here every weekday, and I hope you'll join me.